Do you ever look at your guitar sometimes and just think, I just want to be able to pick you up and just play something? Like, not practice, not run scales or exercises or anything like that, or even parroting, you know, my favorite songs. I want to just be able to pick up the guitar and play. You ever think about that? Now, all that stuff is important, don't get me wrong. You know, you got to be able to practice and do exercises and all that good stuff so that you can build your skills and maintain them. But sometimes we just want to pick up the guitar and play. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's important to just remember why we picked up the guitar in the first place, because of the joy that we get from playing it. So today I'm going to show you a simple trick that you're always going to remember, and next time you just want to pick up your guitar and play something. But don't forget to stick around till the very end of the lesson, because I've got a free gift for you and your guitar that you're going to love. And it's all pretty simple, straightforward stuff. We're not going to need to break any new ground for this concept. We're just going to take a simple chord progression and a simple scale and then just combine the two. So like in the beginning of the video, I was there doing an A minor blues thing, right? So it was just a blues progression in A minor. So we had the A minor chord, which would be our 1 minor, right? And we got our 4 chord, 4 minor, D minor, and then our 5 minor, E minor. So it's just those 3 chords, A minor, D minor, and E minor. And what I was doing was playing the minor pentatonic scale and really just 1 octave of it over each scale. And I was reflecting the scale though to go with each chord. So let me give you an example. When we're on the A minor chord, the 1, I was just focusing on the A minor pentatonic as we all know it here. 5, 8, 5, 7, 5, 7. Right, starting from the low E string to the D string. That's the entire pentatonic scale, by the way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then threw in that octave there. So penta 5, it's a 5-note scale. You may know the entire pattern for those additional notes, which are fine and they're valid and everything, but I'm just telling you that the entire scale, as far as the actual musical content, when you boil it all down, is just those 5 notes. So I was just focusing on those for the sake of simplicity, you know? So A minor, and then the A minor pentatonic right on top of it. So they were really just played next to each other. I would just play that A minor chord and then just run the scale a little bit. But I would do it in a way that was deliberate. So it wasn't just about, you know, mechanically walking up and down the scale, like, or anything like that. I wanted to kind of make it interesting. So I was adding like a little bit of a flow to it and some dynamics. So like some notes I picked a little louder than others, just to give it a little bit of a guitar linguistics vibe going. Something like that. There's all kinds of ways you can play it, but it's just a simple idea that we're just adding some, you know, just zhuzhing it up a little bit. And then when we move to the 4 chord, right, you can play D minor or D minor 7 if you want. I would take the same pentatonic scale, right, only adapt it now to D minor. So instead of playing the A minor pentatonic shape, I'll play that same shape, only a string down. So starting on the 5th fret of the A string, right, we're playing now D minor pentatonic. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's the 5 notes, and then a little octave there. So you can think of it like we're changing keys with each chord that we're getting, and it actually works harmonically, you know, in the flow of the overall progression. Then of course we take this same idea and then bring it up to the E minor chord, or E minor 7 if you want. So it's starting on the 7th fret, we're doing 7th fret to the 10th fret, and 7, 9, 7, 9 on the D and G strings. And then when we move through the chords, all we're doing is just sticking to the respective pentatonic scale to the respective chords. So as an example, you know, there's the 1. And then let's move on to the 4 chord. we want to make it flow, right? We want to kind of feel like there's some dots being connected here, rather than just making it too rigid as far as just cutting and pasting. But we want to, what I did there was I found the root note, right, of the D minor chord, or the D minor 7 chord, or whatever, and the same is the root note of the D minor pentatonic. I just landed on it because it's right there within the neighborhood of the A minor pentatonic, right? There's the note. So if I'm starting on the 1 chord, and then I move to I play that root note first to kind of imply the change, and then follow through with the rest of the chord. Now that I'm here, I can now employ the D minor pentatonic. Right? But it's got to go somewhere, you know? So it has to move to either, if you want to take it to the 5 chord or back to the 1 chord. Personally, you know, just kind of being so used to listening to minor blues, usually 1 chord to the 4 chord, back to the 1 chord. So I like to go back to the 1 chord from the 4 at this point in the progression, we could say. So we've gone from the 1 chord, right? Now we want to connect it back to the 1 chord. So we have 2 options actually. If we're thinking in terms of just the root notes, there's actually 2 A notes that are right here within the neighborhood of where we're at. So we can just choose, like if we want to do this one, which is right within the D minor pentatonic, it's right there. We can do that and then signal the coming of the 1 chord, all right? Or we can just like move it right back to the lower octave of that same root note, if it's just easier to do that and then form the whole chord. So if let's say we're on the 4 chord, you could do it like that, right? That's one thing I like to do is like I'll play that upper octave, I mean, implying that there's something happening, and then I'll just confirm it with playing that lower root octave note, and then following through with the 1 chord. And so when you're doing it in more of a free form kind of way, it's easier because it just gives you time to just breathe and think about your next move, you know? We'll talk about in a minute how we can add some rhythm to it and give it a little bit more spice. But for now, it's fun to just freeform it because it's such an emotional sound, right? That minor key and then the scale we're using and everything that can really like just invoke some feels, you know, just by playing it freeform like that. You know? And so now let's find our way to the 5 chord, right? Which happens to be right here on the 7th fret, right, of the A string, which is right within the A minor pentatonic, right? We walked up to it, and now that we're here, we now have the E minor pentatonic. All right, so now that we're in that, you know, we're in that zone, we can use those notes. And let's say we want to walk it back down to the 4 chord. So you want to make it so that there's movement, right? And then you just, again, when you're free-forming it, you have time to think like, I'll just kind of do whatever, and then it's like, all right, now I'm going to land on the note that's going to signal the coming of the next chord. And then right there you have those 3 chords in the minor blues progression. You can do them in whatever kind of order you want. It doesn't have to be faithful to the form. If it's just you playing guitar, right? If you're just going solo and you just want to sit there and just play, right? It's the whole point of this. Is like, it's just something you can just sit and play. Then you can just do that. You can stay on any chord or any scale as long as you want, but just keep in mind that flow, right? You want the chord changes to be as obvious as possible. So you want to strongly imply them. And what I like to do is I like to do what's called leading. So it's like I'll play a note that leads into the next chord and then like just kind of like close the book on it by playing the actual chord after doing that lead. So, I mean, another fun thing you can do, because a lot of progressions will do this, where they won't even start on the 1 chord. Maybe they'll start on the 5, go to the 4, and then like resolve on the 1 chord. So we can do something like this, like. Throw a little bit of chromaticism for fun. Then it's like you can kind of hear how that we're home now. Now that I've hit that A minor chord, you can hear that we've made it home. So this is in kind of a crude, overly simplistic way. We're playing over chord changes because, and it's simple because we're doing simple minor chords and we're using a minor pentatonic scale that perfectly reflects each minor chord, and we're just landing it on the different chords in whatever order we want, and it's just implying those changes so it still feels musical and it still feels like a chord progression. Oh hey, real quick, if you're getting some value out of this lesson, be sure to hit that like button and consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. Really helps us out and it lets us know what lessons you want to see more of, and believe me, we would love to bring you those lessons. So thanks in advance, and let's get back to the lesson. But if you wanted to add some rhythm to this, let's say make it more akin to like A Thrill Is Gone, right? Just like something like that, right? You can do that and then just stick to the chords as you know them changing, you know? Like that, right? And same basic idea. I just now tightened it up a little bit with some rhythm, and I was more, I stuck to the changes as far as the flow of the changes, and I used The Thrill Is Gone, by B.B. King as kind of my framework. And there you go. It's like that's a valid minor blues progression that's got that little bit of rhythm, little bit of lead going on. And this can also apply to any key. It doesn't have to be just A minor. You can move it up to B minor, right? Right here, starting on the 9th fret of the low E string. Do the same shapes. Then now you have E minor as your 4, and then your 5 would be F sharp minor. So this is great if you wanted to have a jam, with a buddy or something, and you're like, let's do a minor blues in G minor, right? You'll know exactly what to do, once you find that the G root note right here on the low E string, 3rd fret, and then you just pick that up, right? Start with that same basic idea. Play that minor bar chord as best you can, Doesn't have to be all 6 strings. If you're still working on bar chords, I totally get it. You can really get away with just playing 4 of the 6 strings, if you can't do all 6 right now. Totally fine. And of course, there's other ways you can play if you want, Oh, that's major. Don't want that. We're doing minor right now. So with the minor pentatonic, right, and there's a reason for that, because obviously with the minor pentatonic and we're doing this thing where we're adhering scale to a chord, it just makes perfect sense that if we're playing a minor chord and we play the minor pentatonic, there's a lot less margin for error, right? You're going to be playing mostly the right notes. And then it's all right there. And then you could just conveyor belt it to any part of the fretboard that reflects whatever key you're going for. All you would need to guide you is just knowing what note on the low E string you're trying to get. So if you want to do, let's say C minor, which is right here, 8th fret of the low E string, and then you use that, and then you play that minor bar chord shape, and then you got your pentatonic right there. Then you have your 4 chord right underneath, your 4 minor. And then you're just, again, reflecting the pentatonic scale with the chord. Then you have... I'm just, just kind of making my way through them just to show you. But of course you can make it even more interesting by adding some rhythm to it. And you don't have to think too hard as far as like, should I add more notes? You don't have to put the entire all 6 string, pentatonic pattern to go with it. That's not to say that you can't. You absolutely can. There's no rule saying that you shouldn't. I'm just saying for the sake of simplicity, because generally when you limit the amount of notes that you have to work with, it forces you to come up with something more interesting, something more exciting. And that's actually great, because if you're able to take a handful of notes and make them sound interesting, no matter how long you're forced to play them, right? Then imagine how much more interesting it's going to be when you add more notes into the mix, right? Adding more notes is not mathematically going to make your playing more interesting. It's just like learning more scales. If you feel like you can't even make one scale sound great, learning another scale or 50 more scales is not going to fix that problem, I'm telling you, right? So it comes down to really hearing the notes themselves. That's why, these chords and their respective pentatonic scales, there's not too much to think about. It's pretty straightforward, right? You know those are going to work. So that gives you time to think and listen, actively listen to what you're playing, and you can actually start coming up with cool ideas, especially when you're doing that leading stuff, right? So if we're going to stay in C minor here, and I wanted to do something, let's say going back to that freeform idea, right? So instead of going in a linear way, or like that, I'm just trying to, and then right there, that note right there, that happens to be the root note of the 4 chord, I could lead into the 4 chord if I want to, and then imply right back going into the 1 chord. Of course, you can add little embellishments, bends and slides and vibratos, that kind of thing, but just try to stay within just those 5 or 6 notes, right? Counting the additional octave. Just try and stay within that little wheelhouse, because again, it's going to force you to try and come up with more interesting ideas. If you find yourself playing it and you're already bored, right? The reason for that is because you're just playing it one way. And if you play it one way long enough, you're going to get bored of it. It's just naturally going to happen. So if you want to get out of that rut, what you got to do is just change up your approach. So if, let's say, when you're doing something like this, your natural inclination is to ascend the scale. I get it, feels right, but can get boring pretty quick if that's all you do. So maybe try descending the scale instead. I already like that way better than this. Descending it just sounded more interesting. It sounded like more of a like off the beaten path of what I typically like to do. And you just add a little bit of bounce to it with some some dynamics, like some staccato playing. There's all kinds of things you can do. It's not about the amount of notes that you have. There's all kinds of things you can do with your picking hand, You can do stuff like that too, double picking if you want. It just, again, leaves so much room for activities, right, within this simple little framework. So now you have more than enough material to work with if you just want to sit and play your guitar and actually just play something without thinking too hard and just feeling your way through it, knowing that you have the safety net to play the right notes as long as you stick with the framework that I talked about. And now that you have something fun and rewarding that you can sit and play, imagine being able to expand on it even more so that your repertoire of things that you can sit and play not only increase, but they sound more and more interesting and more musically mature. I happen to have just the thing that's going to get you there. You remember that free gift I was telling you about, right? Well, it's right here. This right here is the fretboard conveyor belt. And this is a system that I've developed over years of frustration, trying to find a method that's going to help guitar players just like yourself navigate the fretboard comfortably and with confidence, and takes your guitar playing from 0 to 60 in like 2 seconds. So be sure to click here to claim your copy or check the link in the description box. There's a lot of valuable information out there on how you can get better at playing guitar. But sometimes it's okay to just take a breath, sit with your guitar, and just do something that makes you happy.